So this video is specifically for my High Desert Yoke pattern. This is a tutorial using the Sunday short rows that I use in that pattern, and I'm just going to explain some of the aspects of how to work these Sunday short rows. So you will have worked the body and the sleeves and joined the yoke, and then you're going to be working short rows before the colour work. And for the Sunday short rows, you'll have some strips of contrasting yarn ready to place, and they should be approximately 5 to 6 inches in length. So if we imagine that this is our yoke and we've been working in the round, but now we're going to be working back and forth for the Sunday short rows. And initially you'll just be setting up all of the short rows. So you'll work to the turning point, and then you'll turn for the first short row to work back on the wrong side. But before you do that, you will place the piece of contrast yarn over the working yarn. So you want it to hang over the working yarn like so. And then you're just going to start purling, and it's going to get caught up in your knitting as you go. So there, it's caught up in the knitting, and then you'll just be purling however many stitches depending on the size that you're working, and then you'll place a piece of contrast yarn again at the next short row turn. So you've worked to the turning point going from the wrong side back to the right side. So again, you'll turn the work, and you'll do the same thing with another piece of scrap yarn. You will lay that horizontally across the working yarn so that the tails are hanging down either side of your working yarn. And this time we're getting ready to knit. So you just go ahead and start to knit and allow that contrast yarn to get caught up in the knitting. So you'll be working a series of pairs of short rows, but every time you place that contrast yarn, those pieces of scrap yarn are going to be hanging down on the inside of the work, or on the wrong side of the work. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I have only set up one pair of short rows, and that's just so I can demonstrate how they'll be closed once you've finished setting up all of your short rows in the High Desert Yoke pattern. You will have, I think, a total of 5 pairs of short rows to close. And once you finish the short rows, you'll stop working back and forth, and you'll continue to work in the round again after that point. So the first set of short rows that you'll be closing are the ones that you made where you went from the right side of the work to the wrong side of the work. So I'm going to demonstrate how those ones get closed first. So you're going to work all the way up to the actual gap that was made, and then your contrast yarn tails are hanging down here, and you're going to get hold of both ends of the tail and pull, and you'll see that little loop coming out the side of the knitting. So you'll place that onto the left hand needle, going in from front to back, and then you're basically just going to knit the next stitch and that picked up loop together as one to close that, and then you can remove the scrap yarn. So that's how you would normally close a Sunday short row on going from the right side of the work to the wrong side of the work. But because we are now working back in the round again, the short row gaps that you made going from the wrong side to the right side are going to have to be closed a little differently. And that's due to us working in the round instead of back and forth to close those gaps. So for the remaining short row gaps that you have where you worked from the wrong side to the right side of the work, those are going to have to get closed differently because we're working in the round. So you will work up to 1 stitch before your gap this time. So contrast yarn is hanging down here, attach just below this stitch. So you're stopping 1 stitch before. You're doing the same thing of pulling on the ends of the contrast yarn to pull out a loop. This time it's going to feel a lot tighter than it did because you're stopping 1 stitch before. So you might have to sort of gently coax that loop out. And then what you're going to be doing is you'll be placing that loop onto the left-hand needle again, like so. And then you're going to be knitting it with the next stitch on the needle. So everything is quite tight together here. So you have to be careful not to knit all 3 of these loops together. Just make sure you're going into the stitch and the loop itself. And as I said, it will feel quite tight on this side, and pull that through and off, and then you'll just continue knitting. And again, you can pull out your contrast yarn once you've closed up that gap.